view the meeting. We are now live on YouTube. Welcome everyone, our general public members. Thank you. We saw one who accidentally signed into this meeting, and I thanked him and thank everyone who is tuning in tonight, because with education, real time about what's going on, and then the ability to email me, trustee Casse at portjeff.com, any questions, thoughts, which I then, each meeting, I will bring all of those questions and thoughts back to the committee. And so, that is the process right now for public input. But of course, public input is the strongest when the public knows what the committee is looking at. For today's agenda, we're looking at the history of what's gone on with that land. And so that's really strong information for the public. So we welcome you tonight. I welcome my fellow committee members. If we just take a moment to introduce ourselves to the public. I am Trustee Rebecca Casse and the chair of the 6 Acre Park Committee. And we have Brian.
Brian Smith, nice to see you all. Thank you.
Very good. Port Jeff resident. Kathleen.
Port Jeff resident and advocate of Parkland for over 10 years, and a retired teacher in Port Jefferson.
Perfect. Thank you, Kathleen. And Kelly.
Hi, Kelly Devine, Port Jefferson restaurant resident. I'm a little hungry. That's why I'm saying restaurant.
Well, and I'm sure when you cook up a storm, it's a restaurant there. So we're very good. Wonderful. And we will have Mark Brosnan, another resident, joining us later. We're all going to do it now. Joining us in a short while. But for now, we're going to go ahead and pull up the agenda for this evening, review that, and begin with our old business, which is to look back at the work that was done in the last meeting and start from there. So we're going.
And Rebecca, I just had a question. I wanted to ask you, will minutes be taken at this meeting? I know that's the standard procedure for minutes.
Yes.
And last time you said that what you were typing, which was the 2 charts, was the minutes, but that really wasn't officially minutes. And I'm just respectfully asking that minutes really be.
So Kathleen, if you feel that more thorough minutes should be taken, you're welcome to, if you're volunteering, to take those more thorough minutes. Otherwise, in these settings when we're working together and having equal input with myself as the scribe usually, and all committee members being able to amend, make suggestions to the documents that are being worked on in front of us, I will gladly do that. But if you're welcome to take more thorough minutes and put them on the record.
Well, I know the protocol is for village meetings is that, maybe they take turns to do minutes, and I'll be glad to do it this time. If so, I'm going to record it because it's much easier for me to take the minutes if I'm recording it. And
sure. We're live on YouTube, and we will be able, any of us and the general public, to access this meeting in perpetuity, as long as the village has their account. So it is being recorded for you already.
Ideally, it would be best if there was a village secretary that could transcribe what.
Unfortunately, for committees, that is not, that is not the standard procedure. So as our work as a committee, if you would like to take more thorough minutes,
I'll do it this time, and maybe someone else will do it next time.
Very good. We will discuss as we plan our next meeting. So thank you all again for being here. We have our meeting, let's say, late, it's Mark Brosnan. All right, so our agenda for tonight, we have old business, which is to revisit and revise the committee's vision, mission, and goals, which is a document I will pull up momentarily. We will revisit and revise the project stakeholder identification. I will briefly review that, the intent of that document before we add, modify, make our amendments to that document as a committee. And then in the new business for today, we did get hot off the presses a topographic survey. Thank you, Mayor and the Port Jefferson Village Administration, for making that happen so quickly. After our last meeting, we did request a topographic survey to better understand the lay of the land, and quite literally. And so we have that to start to look at. And then we will also examine past actions, discussions, and uses of this land, which is I am excited personally because I know we touch upon things in conversation, and as a committee, we made one of our goals to share a meeting where we look at all of these past actions, discussions, and uses. So that will be our second new business item. And then finally, something that will always be on new business. As the chair, I will put I have a document, a running document of public input. So anyone who is viewing this, whether it's live or afterwards, there is always a form of public input for this project. You could either come to a Board of Trustees meeting, which are currently virtual, and there's public input the first meeting, which is the first Monday of the month. And then more flexible is an email. You could always email trustee-kassay, K-A-S-S-A-Y, @portjeff.com and send in your thoughts, comments, questions, and they will be addressed in this public input section of the meeting as we go along and have our monthly meetings. So we will go ahead and move to that document that is our goals, our visions, and start from there. So if committee members, if you have, we could take turns sharing any additional thoughts with this document, and whoever would like to go first, I invite you to volunteer. All right, so I've pulled up the document here, share it on the screen. It's our vision, mission, and goals, which were created on our meeting on December 7th, and they're being amended today. So we'll start with the vision. Did any committee members have anything to modify with the committee's vision?
If you could just read that vision out loud, that'd be great.
Absolutely. So the vision that was established at the last meeting by the committee collectively was to the land is intended to be passively used Arboretum like Parkland with possibility for area used for community gardens. The adjacent parking lots will be sought for use to access the park. Any modifications?
I just want to state, because I know it wasn't in, as official minutes in the last meeting. I'm not an advocate for the communal gardens to be in this area, as we have a communal gardens down on Beach Street. But I'm very much for the Arboretum and making this something that is for all the residents of Port Jefferson, and to have it something be least invasive and help the environment with a planting of trees.
Very good, thank you. Any modifications to this text here? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to our mission. So the mission that was established by the committee at the prior meeting, it's the 6 Acre Park Committee's mission is to make recommendations to the Board of Trustees for possible uses within the designation of Parkland of this acreage. So that's our broad mission that we have to sort of the umbrella under which we will do all of our work. Any modifications to this text? Okay. Seeing none. All right, we'll move on to our phase 1 goals. We realize that there's many phases to this project. Phase 2, phase 3 will be, and there will be implementation of, whatever the Board of Trustees might approve. So we figured, to make it a little bit more bite-sized, we are working on phase 1 currently. And so the phase 1 goals are as follows: to attain and review a topographical survey, which we have done and are going to review tonight. Goal 2, the history of land use studies and discussion, which we will also tackle tonight. Goal 3, timeline for park discussion, creation, change of, when will the change of Highland Boulevard move to align with Station Street there. Number 4, discussion of present and future ecology of parkland. So looking at invasives versus non-invasive species of plants. Perhaps doing soil analysis or soil boring, species studies or bioblitz, and keeping in mind deer and tick issues. Goal number 5 is to meet with the Port Jefferson Village Parking Committee, owners of adjacent buildings, and any others to establish nearby parking for parkland. So looking at shared parking agreements as opposed to building new parking fields for this park. Number 6, identifying funding sources, which are grants, the Port Jefferson Village itself, local stakeholders, tree fund, etc. Number 7 is looking at the human involvement with the parkland. What will that impact be? What opportunities can this offer our local community and visitors alike? Number 8 is pre-budding, so identifying and addressing current alternate use suggestions. So there have been in the past and currently many use suggestions for this parkland, and so examining each of those and seeing if which suggestion or suggestions are viable. Number 9, discussion of safety, security, and fire access, including a discussion with the Port Jeff Village Code enforcement, and including discussing signage as well. So our Port Jeff Village Code, as well as Suffolk County Police, are all stakeholders, and so we will be speaking about stakeholders momentarily, but a really good ongoing discussion with them as part of our process here to make sure that we are planning for a good teamwork moving forward. And number 10, we have discussion of maintenance with the Port Jefferson Village Parks Department, because of course we shouldn't build something that cannot be maintained by our wonderful Parks Department. Okay, are there any modifications to our goals by committee members?
I have one, but someone else speak first. My only one is on that history of the land use studies and discussion. You might have to add testing soil for toxicity.
Okay, I wonder, would you be okay with adding that to soil analysis down here?
Yes.
Soil boring, and then I'll put comma, test for toxins.
Mm-hmm.
Does that suit?
That's good.
Thank you. Okay, any further additions, modifications?
I'm sorry, I've been thinking about it.
No, it's good to be together.
I also think that, I don't know if we need to add one more, but I also think that, and again, maybe this is going to be on the stakeholders, but if there's any liability issues that we have to look at, maybe Attorney Egan may need to be involved in this for anything. It could be because of toxicity with its history, and it could be of other things that are nearby.
It's a good point.
Absolutely. Perfect. So we haven't added number 11, which is discussion regarding liability with village attorneys.
On number 3, timeline for park design creation. This is a pretty big parcel. Is this going to be something that we as a group are going to work on design, or will we be bringing in an outside entity such as Andropogon to create a design?
It's a very good question. I think that's something that we will have to include in our proposal, decide upon. And so a timeline for park design creation, and then let's see. So we could say method and timeline for park design. So method either in-house or contracted. And then does that work for you, Brian?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. No, it's another very important discussion that we have to have is, are we placing each tree and pathway, or are we calling in landscape designers and architects to create this park based on the recommendation that the Board of Trustees would accept? Kelly? Well,
that's a kind of a point of clarification, since our recommendation is a recommendation for kind of the general use. I was just wondering how detailed we need to be, or even if this needs to be in terms of phase 1 goals and might be more in phase 2 goals.
I think as looking at the sort of 5-mile view as opposed to the 1-mile view. So we want details as far as, broad strokes. So if we want, a majority of native plants, or if there are certain there's certain aspects that we would really want either the in-house folks working on it or the landscape architect to strongly consider or definitely implement. I think that would be included in a recommendation to the Board of Trustees because it paints the picture of what would be going in there. But having exact tree lists, during phase one, perhaps this is as much as I love getting geeking out about the details of this. I think those types of things will be more in phase two when we say, okay, we've resolved the broad stroke. What then the real fun starts, where we get to fantasize about all this. If for anyone watching, a lot of us are eco nerds, so, and I say that proudly. Go ahead, Kathleen.
Oh, sorry. I had a question about, is it definite that the road is going to be changed? Because I was looking at today at the road that's newly put in, which was a little alleyway, and it's so narrow and cars are going to be just traveling right by the windows of that building. And I know that, Mayor Garant wanted everything and the plans that were for the upper port that that would coincide with the new readjustment of the road. I was just wondering, is it worth it all? And really, do we want to really connect it with that little narrow road?
So the narrow road, Station Street, which is going between the Long Island Road parking lots, just north of the Long Island Road parking lot that's adjacent to the station, and just south of the new construction that's going up. So that's the area that Kathleen is mentioning. It's going to be a one-way road. It is very near to, it's going to be one way going away from Main Street. It is quite near to the building. That is said and done, but actually in a short email back and forth with our village administrator, Joe Palumbo, today, while I was attaining the topographical survey and asking him a few questions about that, I did ask about what the timeline might be, as we asked last time, for that moving of Highland, and Joe said that he's not sure. I should follow up with the mayor, which I will, about that. And he believes that perhaps it's not set in stone yet. So that might be up for discussion. We're going to look at a document in a little while that's a possible plan for the village to use part of this parkland for parking lots, and that has the realignment of Highlands Boulevard on it. So perhaps if the village might end up looking at the whole plan and rethinking it. But again, I think the work that we do here can help inform that, and otherwise that's as much information as we have at this
Okay,
point.
so what you're saying though is that it's not a definite that will be changed to that other suggested roadway. And because I was just wondering the whole cost of the village and the whole, with everything else going on in the village, the whole cost of realigning that.
Yep. So I think we will further that discussion with the mayor, and take that as it comes. And if there's input to be had, we will ask to provide it. Otherwise, do we have any other thoughts on the phase one goals before we call them set in, I want to say stone, but hard clay? None? All right, very good. So those are our vision, mission, and phase one goals. You can see we're already chipping away at the first couple of goals, and I'm very excited about the vision and the mission. So next on our agenda is to take a look at our stakeholders, the list of stakeholders that we have created at the last meeting. So for anyone watching who was not present at the last meeting, the stakeholder analysis chart we have here that we're about to show is a tool to help the committee look at who is going to be impacted by this park, who might have concepts, ideas, wants, needs, that are important to take into account when we are thinking about and forming our recommendation to the Board of Trustees. So this is not the exclusive list of people who are going to be making decisions. It's just that large sweeping list of things to think about, instead of just making little notes for ourselves. We have this list, and we have, and then our next step with this document will be to fill out the chart that goes, that is the row, to complement the column, and look at, the level of impact of each stakeholder, level of interest by each stakeholder, etc. So they will all be different, but these are essentially the groups that we do not want to forget how this park could and will impact them. So currently, I will read off the stakeholders that were established at the last meeting, and then we will take any amendments to the stakeholder list before moving on. So right now we have Port Jefferson residents at large, so that is all residents of Port Jefferson, residents of the Highlands immediately adjacent to the Parkland boundary, because they will be highly impacted by whatever does happen here. It's potentially residents of the Highlands in general, so they're living near there, but not immediately adjacent. We have the Uptown apartment residents, so they're incoming as well as currently there. We have Northwell Health, which has medical buildings and the hospital, as well as St. Charles. We have Pax Christi right next door. We have the Greenway Trail, which is nearby and might be complementary to this. We have Port Jefferson Village Code and Suffolk Police, as we were talking about before. They're very important stakeholders in making this a beautiful, safe place for our residents to go and enjoy. We have Upport businesses. We have the MTA Long Island Railroad. We have the Port Jefferson Harbor and Arts Conservancy. It's the longer, but very well known in the village as the Conservancy, which is a nonprofit arm of the village that helps make amazing things happen, like Rocket Ship Park and others. We have the Port Jefferson Village Business Improvement District, which helps to create other wonderful things in our business districts. The local garden clubs, so the Swasset and the Drury Village Garden Club, as well as others. The Chambers of Commerce, so we have the Port Jefferson Village Chamber of Commerce and the Port Jefferson Terryville Chamber, the Greater Port Jefferson Terryville Chamber of Commerce. We have the mayor and the board of trustees. Of course, they must be kept in mind because the board of trustees and the mayor will ultimately decide if the plan is viable and wants to move forward. We have other elected officials beyond Port Jefferson government. So we have our town councilman, John Kornreich, legislator Kara Hahn, Assemblyman Steve Engelbright, and Senator Anthony Palumbo. We have residents and visitors with different abilities. So anyone who might be in a wheelchair, anyone who might be able to walk, but requires certain types of walking paths to be able to enjoy the space. So we're thinking about those residents and visitors as well. And then the nonprofits that are nearby here who might have interest in this. So the national or local Four Harbors Audubon Society, the Nature Conservancy, Avalon Park and Preserve. And that is the exhaustive list of what we created as a committee in the last meeting. I know I have some suggestions to add, but why don't we start with one of our members here. Brian, do you have any modifications?
I don't, but that is an exhaustive list, and you were going to think of adding more.
I have mostly just under the categories that already exist, just a couple of notes.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So here, so I'll begin. So just adding to nonprofits, there is the Long Island Native Plant Initiative. If the committee is going towards native plants, might be find interest in this. Would that be okay to add that to our list of nonprofits?
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Kathleen?
I belong to Swasset Garden Club and also to they had a special Zoom on the Federation Garden Clubs on invasive species just this past week, which was very interesting. But I think that's all covered under the title of garden clubs.
Perfect. So I'm going to add the Long Island Native Plant Initiative here. The other thought was to add as a separate stakeholder, The Port Jefferson Village Parks Department. That seems like a significant stakeholder to break out on their own, because they will be ultimately the ones keeping whatever beautiful thing is made beautiful. So is that all right with the committee to add the Port Jefferson Village Parks Department as a stakeholder?
And do we have the code enforcement?
Sorry?
Is the code enforcement listed there? I can't see.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, so code enforcement is right here. And the numbers are very arbitrary. It's not a list of, they're not in any
Importance, right,
order.
not in importance.
No, so I'm
Yeah,
just gonna-
Kathleen, they're row 9.
But thank you.
Okay. And to the MTA Long Island Railroad, I was going to suggest adding the Suffolk County Transit, which is the bus. There are more local. There's bus stops nearby there. I think a bus route is actually going to be routed closer to the park. So just looking at sort of that, the greater transit picture. So is that all right to add there?
Yes.
Thank
Yes.
you. Transit.
I have another one if it helps. I know
Yep.
that once we establish what the park's going to be, let's say if it is arboretum and tree like that, the educational entity would include the schools and other options of having educational entities.
Perfect, that's great. So we'll say Port Jeff Village and local schools. Any others to add right now?
Would the Maritime Explorium be a part of that?
Sure, quite possibly.
Yes.
Yeah. Great, thank you. All right. All right, any other modifications to this list of stakeholders? This is one I think that will be a little bit more flexible than the, going back and changing our mission.
Could you please scroll up to the top?
Please.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
I have a question. If there are other possibilities of funds coming from donors, whether it be a resident, whether it be a former official, is this any place within this list or no?
Sure. So maybe the Conservancy is likely going to be a fundraising arm of this project. So if we lump that in, the Conservancy and donors / funding sources, does that work?
Or individuals?
Yep. Conservancy funding sources, we'll say individual group donors. Does that work for you?
Good.
Perfect. Okay. Any other thoughts before we move ahead? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and move on to our new business. Every time we work on this, I get all excited, like it's a new thing. It's just a wonderful, wonderful project. All right, so going over and finding agenda. So the next item on our agenda is the introduction to the topographic survey, which I will bring up and share. All right, so again, I thank the village for getting this done so efficiently. And here we go. All right, so this is a topographic survey of the land in question. It has Highland Boulevard in its current state. Again, it's a question whether or not its current state will stay or be aligned with. Can you all see my mouse, the little hand? Perfect. So the question is whether or not Highlands Boulevard is going to be realigned here with Station Street. This is the existing resident parking lot, mainly for the Long Island Railroad. This is the Long Island Road parking lot on the north side of the train tracks. There are two very large Long Island Road parking lots here on the south side of the train tracks and a bridge right about here from those parking lots over to the train platform. This is an existing building. This is Pax Christi here. So this Pax Christi medical office of sorts, and then there's medical office all at the top here. So as we look at, and of course this is Highlands condominiums here and here. So looking at this survey, my first question was, whose easement is this? And our village administrator said he believes that it's a power company easement of sorts. So we have underground electric here. That's something I think that perhaps the committee should look more into. What does that easement mean? If you agree?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Definitely, yes.
To
Will this be on our Google Docs?
It's in there, yeah.
Good.
Yeah, so it's a large PDF file, and it's a little funny because it has AutoCAD and other pieces in there, but you could still, just zoom in and explore, scroll around. So I reviewed this document with an architect, my husband, Andrew. I asked him, since he looks at these quite often, to sort of give a lay of the land. So I will share what I know, and then we can have a discussion from there. So along the property edge over here, there is a berm. There are two berms, and then there's sort of this ravine that goes over between the Highlands condominiums and the Parkland here. There is a high point no, there's a low point. This is a low point right here. So right near, pretty close to Highlands Boulevard. It sinks down. So that's at 168 feet above sea level, I'm guessing. And then as opposed to up here is 186 feet. So there's about a 20-foot difference in slope. So the land is a high point here, sort of where the road takes its first bend. And then it slopes down to this low point over here. There are some other lower points back here, not quite as low, but comparably, so that's at 173. We have, I believe, another low point back here. So this is another low point, 168. And then over here, it slopes off a little bit, but it's not as drastic as the other areas. When I say drastic, it's not a ski slope by any means, but we're just sort of looking at the way that the land is going from a high point at the curve of the road down this way.
Say at least that's near the property line.
Sorry, what's near the property line?
Those low points.
Yes, they are. And so as a committee, we had started to discuss that any of the established woodland here is likely just to be left as is, because it seems silly and shameful to affect any of that. So a lot of this wouldn't be changed at all.
And do you mind if I add?
Please.
Chief Lute, when he spoke, this was some months ago, had said that there needs to be a really like an iron fencing along there, and also treed to kind of hide the fencing so that there's not a problem with the
fencing you're speaking about between the Highlands Boulevard and Highlands condominiums and the Parkland?
Not between the two, but actually on the parkland, within the parkland. And it would actually be, just inside the where the land estimation is there, right there, the blue
Sure.
line.
Yeah, and I think when we have our committee meeting with Chief and Suffolk, it will probably be an on-site meeting so that we can all have a greater sense of, if we get the village to mow some paths for us, to really stand and talk about, because it's one thing to look at the map. It's another, if there's established woodland how far, how far into the land do you leave that? And then where is the fence going? So looking at all of those components.
Just so you know, I'm very familiar with those low points.
Mhm.
And that's not where, the low points are not where there are huge trees. There's lower trees, just if that.
Sure. So I'm going to write fencing incorporated into conversation with police and constables.
So I need to ask you, so that blue line is the village property, correct?
The blue line, yes.
Is the village property. So north of that blue line, if you would just bring it down a little bit again.
Come on. There we go.
North, who owns that land right there?
This land is likely to be owned by the medical park here. When there's a park, developments can only build to a certain density. And so this is likely weighing against the density of the medical buildings here. So that is theirs.
That's quite interesting, because that's a good piece of land there. And
sure. So this is, these are the 6 acres in question. And then I know this is forested, to varying density.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be a component that backs up too, but of course we aren't.
Rebecca, to the right of that, is that DPW building or is that still Highlands? Yeah, that area there.
This area here.
That's another complex.
Yeah, that's condos. DPW is up.
Oh, okay. I forgot about that condominium complex. Okay.
No, it's okay. Yeah, I had to really think about it because DPW does back up over here somewhere, and I had been pondering whether or not there could be some kind of access to the park for maintenance or whatever it be. But
right,
now with the property lines being more clear, and there's just this funny little square right here.
Yeah, and that's really deep down in there. That's very low right there.
Sure.
Well, I won't talk about the history of it, but anyway, we can do that another time. But I also wanted to point out that the medical building on the lower left
here
one, I noticed that the parking lot, the village owns just beyond the line of the parking lot, which I always wanted to find out and know, because all that is village land there.
Correct. Yes. So I mean, this little strip and then also this area right here is part of the 6 acres that we're discussing. So this just south of where Highlands Boulevard is now is village property. And just to note for our discussions about parking easements, we already have the village. This is a village resident lot right here already. It is currently mostly occupied by the construction vehicles for the Conifer apartment building that's going in. But of course, with COVID, there's even less ridership. But arguably, even during peak ridership, before the pandemic, this lot was hardly ever even close to full. So that's a good parking possibility, not just for the park, but also for the Uptown as it becomes more popular for visitors. We also have this adjacent here, which is Northwell is just purchasing, I believe. And so we're hoping to look at parking easement agreements, because these parking lots too, even with the change of use, they're expected to be maybe a little bit more densely parked and with cars, but still there's it's very rare that you see these spaces utilized at all by that building. So we're hoping for perhaps parking easements outside of the usual 9 to 5 of medical use, so that anyone visiting the park in the early morning before work, after work, or the weekends too, might be able to use that. So that's something that we are actively looking into.
I wanted to point out that now that I see that property line is right against Highland Boulevard when it comes to Oakland there.
Mhm.
And so those trees that are north of that line, I know there's quite a few big, tall trees there. That's
Up here.
the property of the medical building. Now,
Yes.
if they do move Highland Boulevard, are they going to be providing that extended drive-in that is presently there to the new
So
Highland Boulevard?
it's a good question. When I'll pull up a document as part of our look at the history as our next agenda item. But there's a document that's sketched out for the village to perhaps make essentially all of this land parking lots, 2 parking lots divided by Highlands Boulevard if it were to be moved and aligned with Station Street. And then that naturally just sort of becomes part of the parking lots where then you could access Highlands or go out on Oakland. So that was the solution that's currently being discussed. This committee has come out strongly against using any of the Parkland for new parking lots. And so it is a question that would have to be addressed as far as if they do realign Highlands Boulevard, then, does this access point for that parking lot sort of get brought out?
Or closed off?
Right, either brought out or closed off, which I do not believe the property owner would be fond of the closing off. But again, this is all part of discussions to be addressed in our parking and roadway discussions. Kelly.
Not that I'm not bringing this up as an advocate of it, but wasn't there a time when a roundabout was being discussed?
Yes, so we as a committee, at the very least, we're discussing the possibility of having sort of a more roundabout-esque area here that would serve both as a welcome feeling of the village designed as such, but also to help give space for cars to turn, obviously, but also sort of a drop-off point in a way where if you're dropping someone off at the train station and you don't need to go into that squirrely, anyone who's dropped anybody off at the train station from Oakland knows it's an awkward situation there. And then also if anyone's being dropped off at the park, if there's a bus stop. That's also something that we are going to be looking at, and all part of that conversation of what happens if and when there's not parking lots here. Does Highlands Boulevard just stay right there? And then in that case, what happens to this land, and what happens to that access point?
I believe that was Mark's suggestion.
Yes. Mark hopefully is joining. Let me just check on my Zoom here. Are we any further conversation at the moment about the topographic map? We could always come back and reference it while we're sharing documents if needs be.
I was just curious about those buried power lines. Are they live? Like, are they feeding the Highlands electricity grid, or?
I have to think so. I have to think they're doing something, but I have, as one of my notes already from emailing with our village administrator to discuss with the mayor what is known. We don't want to build something and then they have, they say, oh, well, we can dig it up. We want to make sure we can, do
Right.
what we want to do on this easement. Is there any other, are there disruptive thoughts if it is live power lines?
No, just that there's going to be sort of a buffer
Right
around them so that so if they do need to be accessed, or and we certainly don't want to put a shovel in the ground, and I'm sure they're buried pretty deeply anyway, but I just had no idea that a power line would be running through that. So
I didn't either. It was a surprise. I'm curious. I guess I'd have to go out there with some kind of measuring tape or figure out how to see where is that line. Where is this property line? And so therefore, where is the easement? And therefore, is this already wooded? I don't know. It seems pretty far out.
I can tell you because friends of mine, we clean up the parkland, we go in there and get the garbage. We haven't done it in the last, let's say, year because of COVID, because of ticks mostly, but and then we just haven't been around because of COVID. But that's fairly wooded, especially along the parking lot. and then it kind of then it lessens. But we have been picking garbage up on the medical building property, we noticed, and there was quite a bit of garbage there.
Yes, there is, and I'll say when you coordinate that again, Kathleen, please let us know, and I'll send the bat signal out, and hopefully even larger group, because I do know I walk sometimes when I drop my husband off at the train station. I'll walk the dog just along here to continue wondering all this.
Sadly, it's become less and less. Like we do right along the sidewalk, and we do whatever's seen, but because of the tick situation.
Yes.
We don't go way in anymore, because even if heavily closed, they're saying that there is even chiggers in there, because there's wildlife in there. There's deer and all kinds of squirrels, birds, everything, rabbits, and it's a wonderful natural setting. So it's
all right. Yeah, so we'll look at that moving forward. Any other thoughts about, while I have the map open? Again, we can refer back to it anytime during our next.
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. So again, just so happy to have that map to refer to as we continue our work. And now we're going to move on to the next part of our agenda, where we are looking at the sort of history, essentially previous discussions or actions that we're taking regarding this parkland, as we as a committee have forming this working relationship with one another. We see that each of us are bringing something different and very valuable to the table. And so as we say, oh, well, I found this and I had done this, we said, well, why don't we just take the time to have that discussion, formally sharing everything that we know so that we can move forward on a united front as far as knowledge of all of this goes. So as a committee, we have a Google Drive. And so members were invited to add anything to the Google Drive that they have and want to discuss. So I'm happy to start the discussion if that's okay. Okay, and then we will go from there. So I'm going to be sharing. Easy switch to this. Okay, so. All right. So here are our collective documents. All right, so of course, beginning with the very basics, everyone has very easy access to our comprehensive plan. In that huge, multi-chaptered document, there is, if you go to section Q, and then it's section 3.5.3, there's a discussion already in the comprehensive plan about Highland Park. It does note here the realignment, and very interestingly, actually, there is no cut through here. I'm just noticing this after our discussion. So anyone can, I'm not going to fill the airwaves with reading this, but again, I encourage any resident to, see, I have it on here. It's Appendix Q, the Uptown report. And again, that is 3.5.3. So you have that image, and you also have this page from the document that shows different possible schematics for the parkland there. So we see we have some precedent for in scheme A, a passive park, arboretum, and community gardens. Other schemes, recreational park, community facility like a YMCA, or a park and housing, which I feel like I know quite a bit about building and planning, but I don't know how park and housing qualifies as parkland. But I don't believe that's the direction that the Board of Trustees, if I'm confident enough to speak that I don't believe that's what's going to fly there at the on this parkland. So then we have, let's see, in starting to research this, I came across this document when asking, what plans currently exist for, or being discussed about the parkland there. And this is the document that sketches out those two they're calling them parking nodes. So here again, we have, just to orient everyone, we have the Long Island Road parking. We have the resident parking here. So the train tracks are right here. And this is Pax Christi and the medical building. So here, if Highland Boulevard is to be realigned, there's two parking nodes. Right, one is right here and one is right here. And then the Parkland, the actual park would be over here. It has been established that all committee members are in consensus that they do not wish for the Parkland to be used as a paved parking area. This I have and will continue to relay this to the Board of Trustees and the mayor. But this is a document that is fairly recent, in the last couple of years, and should be something that the committee keeps in mind as far as, we have our stakeholders, and they are looking, this tells us they are looking for parking opportunities uptown. And so that's why we are exploring other opportunities that do not create more hardscape, that do not use green space as, parking, because there's, you cannot create more green space very easily. So that is the story there. Other documents that I came across were these minutes, first or second page, minutes from a Port Jefferson Board of Trustees meeting in March 16th, 2015, where they designate, they resolved to designate this land as Parkland. Trustee Miller, who is still on the Board of Trustees, and seconded by Trustee Kessel, moved to add the word passive to the first line so that it would read properly is hereby dedicated passive public park. And so there's a vote on that, and the motion you can see has failed 2-3 with Mayor Garant, Trustee LaPointe, and Trustee DeBramo voting no. So the word passive was not added to the parkland. So that is not a foregone conclusion that this is to be used as passive parkland. But there are other pieces of the history that point to perhaps that is the proper use for it. I believe, okay, so the other documents that I want to share is the history concerning a movement to try to create a cultural center on this piece of property. I have this New York Times article. I don't know how it ended up in the Times, but it's interesting. So from 1990, there was a small article suggesting that perhaps the Fort Jefferson would consider a cultural center there. I've included the 2 pages of the article here. Again, I'm not going to read it, but be happy to send this to anyone. Essentially, it was a debate between the board of, in the Board of Trustees, the mayor, a group of residents, were proposing this and seriously looking into it. And here's a flyer as well, inviting residents to come and discuss the proposed cultural center on May 7th, I would guess in the early 90s there, or late 80s. And so we see this history here, and we see that it did not happen. And so I'm personally going to be looking more into sort of what was that process like, and why ultimately did it fail to greater inform the committee as to what the leanings of the public are. I know that Kathleen did some personal and very successful outreach to the public regarding buildings of sorts. Perhaps it was the cultural center, perhaps it was another proposition. So at this point, I'm going to hand it off to Kathleen, who can share. Please let me know which files to open when, and I'll be happy to do so.
Thank you, Rebecca. I'm going to go back 10 years ago. What happened was when you had referred to when you referred to the 4 suggestions that were put into the comprehensive plan, one of them was the buildings, the apartment buildings, and there was going to be a possibility that there was going to be a swap of land so that they could build. That didn't work out, and so that one was X'd. And the reason is because I and some other people, I don't want to say names without their permission, and some other people started a Port Jefferson Citizens for Open Space group, and we got 1,500 signatures. The mayor was wonderful, and we were going to go on to 3,000 signatures, and she stopped us at 1,500 and designated it Parkland. And I know her intention really was, I know some of the voting things back then, maybe it was technical with the passive, but I know that's in her heart. It's the last green space that we have in Port Jefferson, and in relation to our environment, and having trees, and it's the last space. So passive was an important thing. So it became Parkland. It was designated Parkland. And as far as other suggestions like cultural centers and everything like that, our village, we have to look at the global picture of our village. We have bluff problems. We have the power plant problems. We have the school district problems, and keeping it going. And supporting a cultural center is just, when we have Stony Brook and we have 303, it's just not logical. So anyway, so we have been most advocating that it be something for universal for everyone. And if it was an Arboretum type park with a walking path, that would probably be the best thing to suit everyone and not be a huge cost to the village.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you for doing all of that work and sharing that with us. That definitely informs us that the many
Yes.
of our villagers support this staying in a more natural setting.
Would you like me to mention what those colored pictures are? Because those are the ones I put in so that people understand. The purple one was just an arboretum, just a treed park. So that would be the least, just at least invasive, just rid the invasive plants and trees, and then plant both native and trees that survive this area that are very interesting, like the educational, like the sassafras tree, the tulip tree, all these other beautiful trees that could be planted there, and it could be very educational. So that's what that purple one is. That's just a suggestion. And then there was the green one there, that's an arboretum, the same kind of concept, but now with a walking path. We're talking a fine grade dirt walking path, maybe with the entrance being there with those crepe myrtles, just to color it up a little bit. But again, we wouldn't have to do all too much. It's not like planting gardens. It's not like even having shrubs. It's just adding trees to our environment to help it be healthier, and to enjoy it at the same time. And then you have the blue one. That was at our very first walk around meeting. This is our third meeting. Our second meeting was about the stakeholders and the visions. The first meeting we met at the park, and you had asked us what each of us had in mind for what was going to take place in the park. And that's all that one is.
Excellent. Thank you.
And
so
also
these are all, for anyone viewing, Kathleen created these schematics.
Yeah, I just drew those myself. Now the line is, I see now, is not exact now when it comes to the north line of the charts. Now that we
Right.
that
Yeah, there's that funny
line
little
is-
jot. Yeah.
Yes, I have it straight there, where it's more of a diagonal there. So, but
Yeah.
it's pretty basic. So it was just a recording the first meeting that we had suggestions. And then the white one there is just what it is presently. Again, that would have to be altered because of the most northern line is really, now that we see the survey, is more at an angle.
Right. Yep, over here. Very good. Thank you, Kathleen. Were there any other documents? The others look familiar to me. So, all right. Anything else that you wanted to share as far as the history of what's been discussed there, what's gone on there?
I think I need to do share this also. When that land was possibly going to be switched with some land that the village, did not own, but the builder wanted to build, I went and foiled the property. I had to go out to Riverhead, and I have to tell you this because this is fact. I foiled the property, and I can tell you what the history was. And since you're asking, it was a asphalt factory. I saw it on microfiche, and you had to go back in history. So this is something that we have to really look into, whether how much we're going to get involved in what is being done on that land, because obviously it has to be tested for toxicity. This is going to be a cost to the village. And but it does have to be done because again, we'll get if we could get Attorney Egan involved, because there could be liability for, you know, what could happen on that land if there's people planting.
Very good. Thank you, Kathleen. All right.
I have a question for Kathleen.
Yes.
How far back was it a asphalt factory? Do you know what years we're talking about? Like 1970s, 60s?
I did it 10 years ago. So when I did it, I mean, I remember writing it all down. I was out there, and oh God, it took a long time because it wasn't in your regular documents. It was way back. So I don't have those. That's something now that the village is going to have to investigate. And I'm sure they can do it much more easier than when I did it as an individual. So that's
thank you. I was just wondering how far back we're talking that, that it was an asphalt factory.
That I can't recall. No.
Okay.
Okay. Brian, do you have any?
Yes.
Yep. Anything to add as far as history or knowledge of the property, the plant life on the property?
You know, I don't really have a heck of a lot to offer. Just, you know, when I was younger, living in that in the apartment complex on the other side of the Highlands, you know, I remember the news. It was always coming up in the local paper, and you know, there was always a lot of attention to that parcel. But being I was in my early 20s, I was not a civic-minded person that I am today. So I don't have a full history of the property. As an adult driving through there, I always kind of did vision this, even before we spoke about being a part of a committee. Just thinking, wow, this would be a really great place to fill up with more tree life. Because as of right now, it's just an open parcel of what appears to be invasive species. And some kind of and I'm sure it's an informal grassland of some kind. But yeah, I just, you know, I appreciate the sketch works that Kathleen has did, because it really puts things into perspective of the possibilities that could happen. So
yeah, with your background in working with plants, and I've looked at this too with you a bit. We are determining that at least the vast majority of the plant life there is invasive.
You know, off the bat, I could tell there was nori maples, there was those Bartlett pear trees, and then, you know, crummy grasses. Nothing that's very important.
Right.
And I don't know how often the village maintains that property. Is it once a season they go into mow? I don't even know that, because that parcel just seems to always look the same.
Yeah. The mugwort, you know, sort of dies off, and then, you know, it's the next season's mugwort comes up next to it. And I know that the village obviously maintains the grassy area on the perimeter around Highlands, so that when you're walking there, at least you don't feel like you're about to get sucked into all of the weeds, and, you know, you're anchored by a vine or something. But
right. But I mean, it's a parcel of land that's kind of landlocked. It's not part of a corridor.
Right.
But that being said, neither is Central Park. So
Right.
any kind of greenery that you do introduce in terms of trees and shrubbery is going to have a beneficial impact on wildlife, on people, on human well-being. The studies are in that tree-lined areas provide more mental health benefits for people. There seems to have a crime alleviating effect as well. There's just too many good things to pass up without giving this parcel a shot of a new life.
Perfect. Thank you, Brian.
I was going to agree with him. I have been writing some nice letters over the last years to our Parks Department and saying thank you so much for the mowing that they have done on the edge, because it has really added to it when they've mowed a little bit more, and it has really made it nice. And I have to say, from really being in this village for, I taught here for 37 years, and I've been here over 45 years. So what I've noticed is our village is so rich in so many things, in athletic parks, in golfing, in all these different things that it has. And we don't have a space that's just a meditative trees space that could be used for anyone to go walk through and have a meditative time and celebrate trees and even educationally celebrating the importance of them.
Very good. Thank you. And Kelly?
And I agree with what Brian and Kathleen have talked about, and just want to underline, there's a Japanese concept known as bathing in a forest, because of the beneficial mental and physical health effects of just being in nature, even if that little stand of trees is within another urban setting. So both Brian and Kathleen are correct to point out that as an enormous benefit. But just to key in on something that Brian was talking about, it being a place that doesn't have a corridor. The reason why I was glad on the Excel spreadsheet that one of the stakeholders identified is the Greenway project is that the Greenway does have to somehow connect from, from where it ends now by the 7-Eleven on Halleck, and then where it picks up eventually on Halleck, just as Halleck meets Crystal Brook Hollow. And so if there was some way to kind of encourage a little diversion of people who are hiking past or biking past our park, it would be, it would be a nice addition.
Thank you. No, it's a great thing to note that the Greenway has been established fairly recently as far as projects go. And I finally got on the new part of the Greenway recently, and I'm just happy for even more place to stretch our legs, different views, place to go with the dog. And
did you go down from Crystal Brook Hollow down towards Wading River?
Not all the way to Crystal Brook Hollow. I jumped down it. We drop our glass recycling off in Mount Sinai at the community center there, and it's there at the back of the parking lot. There's an access point, so we decided to take a little stroll, and yeah, I'm excited to take more time and go. But so you're saying that it picks up again in Crystal Brook Hollow?
Yes. So if you go at the end of Halleck, where and basically you have you can kind of follow that the end of it, and it will end up at 347 and kind of put you on to 347 going east.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's a light at Crystal Brook Hollow, and you can turn left onto Crystal Brook Hollow or right and cross 347 and get to that shopping center. I know this because my dentist is in there.
Yeah.
And so if you make that turn left at Crystal Brook Hollow, you can see where the old railroad lines are. You can see an opening to that greenway there, and I think that's where it starts. So there's a fair bit of space between where it ends by the 7-Eleven on Halleck and one, and 112, and where it picks up again.
Sure, sure. Yeah, we'll take a look at that and see if geographically it makes any sense to sort of incorporate this and have more people enjoying this beautiful amenity that we're looking to create.
And maybe some additional funding and support for the project.
Absolutely, absolutely. Excellent, thank you, Kelly. All right, does anyone have any other pieces of history or knowledge about the land to share at this time? Of course, as we all continue to dig deeper, do different pieces of research, we'll be adding, to this historical knowledge and, set of documents to consider and, potentially support what we're going to be proposing to the Board of Trustees. But for now, we will call that complete for the night. Last piece of the agenda that we're going to address is I'm going to pull up. So this is the space that, again, for anyone watching, if you have thoughts, questions, please do email me at trustee-casse@portjeff.com, and I will be able to share these thoughts with the committee each month through this section of the agenda. I'm just looking to pull it up. And so we will be able to take comment there. We don't officially have any timeline right now for looking at a group public input setting. That will, we've discussed that will be in the future at some point when we have narrowed down a bit as far as, based on our research, what is viable, and then put, viable possibilities out to the committee. But meanwhile, again, everyone is welcome to share and share their thoughts. So for now, I have one comment from Myrna G. She made a comment at the Board of Trustees meeting on the 13th of December last year. And to summarize Myrna's comments from the notes that I took, but she's welcome to add to these should she email me. She suggested not naming the park after currently or recently living a politician, resident, etc., but rather considering naming the park to acknowledge the indigenous people who historically occupied this land. That was Myrna's suggestion for the committee.
That is a nice suggestion.
Yeah. No, I think it's lovely. I don't know that there's many places that do that. And seeing as we're sort of trying to, in part, restore the ecology of that place, it's could be very fitting. So this will be a running list of public comments that have been submitted to myself, the chair, and so each meeting we will bring them back up. Any new ones we will read and look at, and they will always be there for committee members to revisit, consider, and incorporate into our conversations. And that concludes the meeting for the evening. We've accomplished a lot, in my opinion, and hopefully everyone watching at home, whether it's live or thereafter, has learned along with us as far as the history goes, the goals of this committee and everything else that we've discussed. So any other thoughts from committee members before we conclude?
Thank you, Rebecca, very much for making this meeting come about. And I want to especially ask that if we have a meeting in February, could we avoid February 21st through the 25th? So I know February is a tough month because of schools out, and also because of other state schools out at different weeks. So sure. I just most likely won't be here. I could try to be here. I could try. So.
Very good. Well, I've made that note. We will all look at our calendars,
if possible, yeah.
And we will look to incorporate everyone. Again, I guess Mark got caught up in his meeting, which we can all relate to. And then Christina, was regretful to not be here, and so we look forward to hopefully getting even more voices and thoughts in, and tackling the next steps at the next meeting. I will set the agenda items based on conversations that we've determined needed to be had with the mayor and village administration and send that out to the committee soon. And of course, as we have our virtual meetings, it's very easy for us to stream this and record and share with the public. So thank you anyone who's tuned in. Thank you to my fellow committee members for all of your time, dedication, and thoughtfulness as far as this important project goes. And look forward to seeing and sharing with everyone the next time.